We're talking today with John Veenendall, Jr. of Granville, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, John, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Grand Rapids, Butterworth Hospital, August 17, 1925.
All right.
And also they mixed up my birth dates somewhere along the line, and I also have a birth date of August 15, 1925. And it has plagued me for several years, and it still has plagued me. And not only that, they've had my name spelled wrong, and it took me a year and a half to get that straightened out with the state of Michigan.
Okay. All right, so kind of a tricky beginning there. Now, who made the mistake with your birth date? Was it the hospital or the government later? Or?
I have no idea. I think between the hospital and the doctors,
Okay.
that's what it was. That's all I can tell you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you were born 25, so it means you're growing up during the Depression. Now, tell us a little bit about your childhood, what happened then.
Well, in my childhood there, I was right around 4.5 or 5 years old, and my dad and mother went through a divorce, and my mother had us for 2 years or a year, 2 years, something like that, and that's when my brother and I got kicked from pillar to post. Lots of times we never knew where our next meal was coming from or the clothes on our back. Mm-hmm. I can remember we boarded on a farm on 28th Street where Woodland Mall was, and we used to walk up from there to Paris Street where there was a one-room school. And many a time in the winter time we walked there, we had no boots or nothing on, and the teacher would say to us, get next to the stove and dry out. But otherwise, yeah, finally things worked out where my dad finally got a hold of us. I don't want to go to the juvenile home and all that stuff, I don't think, don't need to. Okay. But anyway, my dad got a hold of us, and he got remarried, and he had a house on 552 Umatilla, and that's right in Madison Square. And from there I went to Madison School, and from there I went to South High School.
Okay. Now, I want to back up a little bit. You don't need to talk a lot about the experience here. Can you explain sort of what a juvenile home was? And
well, the juvenile home was during the Depression years where they had bad boys that they put in behind bars on the lower floor. And on the upper floor, that was all for boys like my brother and I needed a place to stay, and until we could get situated. See? That's about all I could tell you there. And they didn't monkey with you there either. Even on the top floor there, you was disciplined, and you learned to do what they told you to. Otherwise, you got a swat with a rubber hose.
All right. Now, and so why did your father put you there?
Well, my father put us there because he had no place to keep us at that time. And then until he got that house back on Umatilla there, then he had us there, and he remarried, and I had a stepmother. Yeah.
Okay. And you also had told me before we started that you spent some time on a farm in Saranac?
Yes, I spent, well, I guess it was pretty close to a year in Saranac, yes. Yeah. But that was a good experience there, yeah.
Okay, so they treated you better than they did in the juvenile home.
Right, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was real homey like that, yeah. The people that we were there with were named Wovens, and of course they're all gone now, but I mean, that was it, and they were real good to my brother and I, yeah.
Okay. All right. But eventually you get to you settle down, you go to school regularly, you go to high school. Now, how did you learn about Pearl Harbor?
How about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, how did you learn about
it? Well, my dad knew all the Fords, and he done business with Ford for paint and that. And when Pearl Harbor started, we were listening to the radio, and we heard it on the radio. And then after that, the only thing I could say is this, I knew Gerald Ford personally.
Okay.
He came up to the house when he went into service in his officer's uniform, and bid goodbye to my mother and my dad, and I was there in the front room. In fact, I let him in the house, and that in my, well, she was my girlfriend at the time, lived across the street from me, and she was there also, and that, and said hello to him, this and that, but see, years ago, I guess, my dad and then all and the business people all used to go hunting together and that, and Jerry was with them, see, and that's it, yeah, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, they lived up on Union Street, above Franklin there, and I think I could probably drive to his house yet today, but I collected, when I worked for the press there, I was 15, 16, I used to collect odd customers that the press had, and I collected at his house a couple times.
And collecting, like collecting their subscription fees?
Yeah, so, see, I didn't know him real personally,
Right.
not until after he got into the service, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
okay. And so yourself, now once that happened, you were still just 16 at that point?
Yeah, right.
All right. And how did you wind up entering the service?
Well, I don't know, I kind of liked Gerald Ford's uniform and that, I think, I'm that, well, I had already gone out to Reed's Lake where they had a naval reserve there and for enlistment, and I went out there and I talked to the chief out there, and he took all my data, and he'd done this and that, and give me some paperwork to do, and I got that all done, and so anyway, I said, well, good. So when come time when I was 17, like that, Dad said, no, you're not going in the service. I said, I'm not going back to school, Dad. I left the school in the 11th grade, and I don't know, teachers they just had no use for me somewhere along the line. I don't know, they just hated my guts, period. I hate to say it that way, but that was it. And so I listened in the Navy, and Dad had to sign for me. So I went in there, and I went to Great Lakes. And,
all right. So when did you enlist in the Navy?
it was August, it was August 17, I guess, yeah, my birthday.
Right.
Yeah.
So as soon as you turned 17, you joined the Navy?
Yes, joined the Navy, yes.
Okay, so that's 1942. All right. And then you said you went to Great Lakes.
Yes.
Now, where is Great Lakes?
Great Lakes is in, well, it's in Illinois, Chicago, just outside of Chicago. And in boot camp, we were the last unit to have hammocks. Then they went to bunks, but I remember sleeping in the hammock. Yes.
Okay. Now, what was the boot camp experience like? What did you do there?
Well, we had done a lot of marching and everything else, and they had some schooling, things like that, and they taught you how to do line, whatever you call rope today. They were line in the Navy, and splicing and all that. And all, I was a Boy Scout, and I knew all that, and oh yeah, and not only that, you marched to different places in the Great Lakes to get your shots and more physical examinations and that, and of course I was among thousands of others just like it, but yeah, I got through that, and everything worked out. And when we got through boot camp, I come home for leave for I guess 12 days, something like that, 2-week leave, and then I went back to Great Lakes, and from there we went to Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay. Now, how did they get you to Norfolk?
How'd I get to Norfolk?
Yeah.
They shipped us by Pullman train. Yeah.
Okay.
They had, I don't know how many cars on that train, but I mean, yeah, we were day and a night going to there.
Okay. Now you said you had a Pullman, so you had actual bunks to sleep in?
Oh yes, yeah, we slept
Okay.
in bunks, yeah.
Okay. Because a lot of guys were just in regular railroad cars and had to sit up the whole
right,
time.
I know, yeah.
So
I talked to a lot of boys that got shipped that way, and
Okay.
they didn't, they weren't too happy.
All right. And when you got to Norfolk, what did they do with you?
Well, they assigned us to a barracks, and then I was assigned to the beach crew there in Norfolk, where I wore rubber suits, and we put PBMs in PBYs off the ramp into the water there in the bay for takeoff.
Okay.
And,
Now explain, a lot of people won't know, what is a PBM or a PBY?
well, they were long-range patrol planes the Navy had.
Okay.
In fact, the PBY was made, I don't think, just after World War I or II, World War I, if I'm not mistaken, but they still have some of those flying down in South America yet.
Yeah.
And the PBM was a bigger plane that could carry more explosives or whatever they had to use on their patrols.
Right. And these were both seaplanes.
Seaplanes,
Yeah,
yep. They were
and that was why you talked about rolling them on a ramp into the water, and then they
Well,
would.
see, they had, on those planes, they had what they call beaching gear. Big rubber tires and that, and you hooked it up to the plane, and then you had well, most of the time they had a Caterpillar tractor, and they would pull that plane with a long, heavy 3-inch rope, or you want to call it, a line, and then they put them up on the ramp, and then put them in place where they wanted to work on them and
Right.
refuel them. Yeah.
Right. So basically, your job involved just moving these big seaplanes in and out of the water.
Yes, right.
At the
Yeah.
time. Okay. Now, did you just get on the job training?
For doing it. Well, it was on the job training, yeah, but that and everything else, and then I can remember there one day it snowed at the base there in Norfolk, and I went down to the hangar and ready for work. See? Well, that was fine, but the officer that was in charge of us, I says, "What are you going to do now? I said, where's the snow shovels? We shoveled out away from the door in the hangar." He says, "Everything is shut down. We don't do any work, not in the snow."
Yeah, well, that's what it's like down there.
Yeah, that was it. So what do you do? I went back to the barracks, and that was it till everything melted. Yeah.
Okay. Now, were you? How many men do you think were in the crew or the group that you were working with?
Oh, there was at least 15 or 20 of us in there. Yeah, and we were on duty. Well, actually, 24 hours a day. Yeah, and that.
So would the planes come and go at night?
Oh yes, yeah. Lots of times we'd put them over in the afternoon, and sometimes they'd come back 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And you were up after, or up and bringing them in, putting them on the ramp.
Okay. Now, do you know anything about the kinds of missions they flew? What they were doing?
Well, most of the time their missions was submarine patrol and convoy patrol.
Right.
As far as I know, otherwise, yeah, and sometimes they ferried crews here and there also. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because they were important in the anti-submarine warfare because they
Oh,
could
yes,
sail
they
off
should-
for a long
yes,
time.
Yes, I could tell you a story on that when I was down in Trinidad. I'll tell you about that too.
Okay. All right. About how long did you spend in Norfolk?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't there only 4 or 5 months at the most. I don't think I was there very long because I put in for sea duty. I got sick and tired of wearing them rubber suits, and when they leaked half the time, and it was winter time here, and that water was cold. So I said I put in for sea duty,
Okay.
which I got.
All right. And then, now, while you were staying at Norfolk, would you go off the base very much?
I went into town a couple of times, but otherwise, no. Anything I wanted to have, we could have there on the base, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have any impression of how the people in the town viewed the sailors or treated them?
Oh, yes, yeah. It always says, sailors and dogs keep off the grass. I think you've heard that before, too, yeah. They liked our money that we had, but they didn't like the sailors. Yeah.
Okay. And then, were there any black sailors on the base?
That I can't remember whether there was or not. I have no idea, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, the Navy was still segregated, so
Yes, they were.
black sailors could only
yeah.
do certain jobs and not other ones.
Right.
But you didn't register
No, they
with
weren't
you at the
into
time.
us, no.
Okay. Now, once you put in for sea duty, and you do get orders to go somewhere. So now, once you get the orders to move, now what happens to you?
All I know is went aboard the U.S.S Albemarle. She was a seaplane tender,
Okay.
converted from a cruiser. And she was a big ship. She carried 5-inch guns on her, and she had two turrets on the over the hangar there, one on the port side, one on the starboard side, and she also carried twin mounts on the bow. So anyway, fine. Got aboard it. I didn't know where we were going to go or where we were going to be shipped to, see. But anyway, we were at sea and everything was going fine, and all of a sudden the horn all rang and everybody put on your life belts, and this and that. And we went through Cape Hatteras, and it was pretty rough in there. And they kept us all inside. We had a submarine attack. And we had the U.S.S Goldsboro with us. She was an old World War I four-stacker with us, and she went after one way or the other. We went one way, and I don't know, it was 2 days later, we were in Puerto Rico, and here come the Goldsboro. She split a plate out there in that rough water, and she had quite a time getting back in.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, we were safe there. And all I can remember when I was in Puerto Rico was they were going to make a marching team out of us, some of us men. And we had a Marine lieutenant in charge of us. And he was a real stickler. You learn how to march, and period. But then they said they needed 25 volunteers to go to Trinidad. And well, in the Navy you learn not to volunteer too well, or too many times. But anyway, I was standing in line, fine, and they had 20 men stepped forward, and the lieutenant said, you, and you, and I was one of the last ones that said you. Okay, so they put us on a plane that 2 days later we got aboard a PBM, okay? And we were shipped, flew down to Trinidad.
Okay. Now, was that the first time you'd actually flown on one of these planes?
Yes, it was the first time I flown in one of them. Yep, and we were bagging baggage, and we had our you had your sea bag, you had your hammock, you had everything all with you, and all aboard, and away we went. So fine, so we got down there, and then they wanted to know how many men could swim real good. So I raised my hand. When I was in boot camp, I swam the pool underwater. And the instructor says, "Where'd you learn how to swim?" Well, being here in Michigan, we had lived up there. Franklin Park, we used to swim there. Garfield Park, I swam in there all the time. It's fine when you were younger, fine. But then again too, I was put in the beach crew right away, quick like. Okay, we need you right now. Oh, all right. So there was we were a squadron. I think it was a 15 or 20 planes we had there, and they're all PBMs. Yeah.
All right. Now, before we go on with that part, I want to go back. The time when you were on Puerto Rico, were you there basically to run a seaplane base? Was that the main thing you were there for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no. But I didn't actually know what we were going to do in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
They just assigned us to that lieutenant, and that was it. And from there, we would be distributed to different jobs.
Yeah.
So I was still a seaman yet.
Okay. So you really didn't have any particular job or know what was going to happen to you at that point, and you were there because you'd requested sea duty, and so they took you out of Norfolk. But now you've made it to Trinidad, and now you're actually back on a beach crew again. So now, were you doing the same work that you had done in Norfolk, or was it different?
Well, it was practically the same, but there again too, you was in a swimsuit 24 hours a day, half hour. Well, when you was required to go to work, you was in the water all the time, and I was in amongst the sharks, the barracuda, and the stingrays. Oh yes, yeah, in the water there. In the evenings especially, they'd all come up and feed on the minnows and things like that, and you had to be very careful where you stepped. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, would the sharks or the barracudas actually bother you, or were they just kind of scary?
Well, if you didn't rile them up, no, they didn't bother you. We had a metalsmith. He made a spear, and he was spearing some of them fish there. See that, and we put a stop to that, especially the stingrays. And no way. And the chief was in charge of us. He said, "That's enough of that." So but otherwise, yeah, I can remember, oh, I had to do, when they had a buoy out there and you had a big line on there with a big hoop on it. I used to splice all them hoops to hand up to the planes. They'd snub it on a post, and we had an iron hook in our, either you swam the tail line or bow line, or you could swim both, which I did lots of times, both, and hook it up to the tail and they'd pull it in backwards. And you put the beaching gear on it, and they had a Caterpillar tractor, we'd pull them all up and spot them, yeah. But that was quite a deal. But I can remember, one time there, we were called out, and it was in the evening, and it was still daylight yet. One of the PBMs on when they were out there, submarine patrol, caught a German sub on top of the water, and they, well, I don't know whether they were sunk it or not. I never did hear that, but the PBM that made the run on it, the machine gun from the German sub fired at the plane, and then the what happened was the navigator got hit, and they came right back to the base, and they radioed in, and we were all ready for them to come. And when they landed and got up to the buoy, I handed the bow line up, and I also swam the tail line right along with it, and we pulled him right in, and we had him in up on the ramp within 4 to 5 minutes. And they took him up to the hospital, or dispensary we called it, but he didn't make it. The bullet caught him in the spine, and it was, yeah. They tried to blame it on the beach crew that we wasn't fast enough. Yeah, well, we had that plane in from the time we tied up on the buoy to on the ramp was within 4 minutes.
Right.
And that was the fastest we ever worked. I mean, we had everything, the beach gear and everything, all in the water, right ready, boy. When he got there, we had it on there and pulled him right up. Yeah. But that's and then I can remember another time working there. I don't know. I was in the beach crew about a year, not quite a year or so. But anyway, we had a PBY crash in the middle of the bay at night, and they got us up, and the chief, our barracks was right alongside the hangar, behind the hangar, and that's where the beach crews stayed, and fine, real good. So we got us up, and I was one of them that got up, okay, let's go. And we got on a crash boat, took us out to the plane, and there was 3 of us swimmers, and the chief, and he says, okay, we're here. Who's going to swim the line over there to tie it up to the plane? The other two men says, not me. I'm not getting in that water with the sharks and there's things like that. Well, Chief, give me the line. I said, I'll swim out there. So I swam out there and tied it up. We pulled it back in, put it up on the beach, and fine, that's it. So the chief says to me, John, yep. He says, you watch the promotion board next month. What do you mean? Yeah, just do what I ask you to. Okay. So actually, he promoted me to chief, first class seaman. Everybody else was second class. So I was supposed to be a boss over them. And here I was only 18 years old, and all the other guys were in their 20s. Right. Real good. But otherwise, it worked out fine. But then, after that, I studied there, and I became petty officer, 3rd class Aviation Ordnanceman, and I was still in the beach crew yet as an ordnanceman, and fine. So I needed somebody to take care of the barracks and clean the barracks, and the one compartment cleaner they had didn't do a very good job. Well, John said, you think you could do it? Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. So anyway, I did, and I got that barrack spick and span, man, all wooden floors and everything else. It was a job to get them all cleaned up, but fine. So I got that all done, and had an inspection on Saturday. Wonderful. Here come the captain of I say captain of the base, but it was captain of the squadron at the inspection. Fine, real good. So he looked us all over. He says, "Did the chief and then who cleaned the barracks here?" He says, I haven't seen the barracks clean this here in Trinidad. They all had wooden barracks, wooden floors, you know, and they were all dingy and grimy. And he says, well, I'll show him to you. He's on the other end of the barracks. Okay, so they come up to me. Of course, I had my rating on my sleeve, yeah. And he says, you cleaned the barracks? Yes, sir. He said, would you like a job to teach everybody else how to do it? If you wish me to do it, yes, sir. But he looked at me, you're a third class ordnanceman? Yes, I am, sir. Well, very good. He says, you report to the ordnance check Monday morning, which I did. Well, okay. And I had quite experiences with in the ordnance check. It was nothing unusual. We worked with the 50 caliber machine guns and 30 calibers and anything that come along that we used on the planes we worked on and got them in shape, and along with the crews that they had to know how to do the same work. So, well, yeah, but I don't know, somewhere along the line we had a lieutenant in charge of the ordnance check, and somewhere along the line, I don't know whatever happened, but he just didn't like me, period. And every detail that came along, extra detail, I was assigned to. But the chief that was in charge of the ordnance check, he said, John, he says, next time one of these details come up, he said, you take the trucks up and get them serviced. Okay. He said, stay away for a couple hours. Okay, so I did. And then come back, everything okay? Yep, he says, yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, then after I left Trinidad, I went home on leave. Actually, I had a leave coming, so I was there long enough to get home on leave, and then I flew back on an old PBM, which was good, up to Puerto Rico, and then from there to Cuba. And I had an experience with a PBY with a Cuba. In Cuba there, we took off from the, this is one that had landing gear on it, 5A, PBY 5A, fine, real good. All right, so here we go. We got up in the air. Uh-oh, what's the matter now? The landing gear don't want to come up. They didn't have enough hydraulic fluid in the system to bring it up. So they cranked it down, an emergency. Okay, so we landed back here on the strip. Okay, good. So that, and the lieutenant, that was the pilot, says, John, or says, he says to the crew chief, where are we going to get hydraulic fluid? He said, I don't know, he said. And I said, well, let's just wait a minute and see what we're going to do. We'll scout around here and see what we can do. Well, the captain of the base had a little widgeon down there that had gear on it too, and it had hydraulic fluid for the system. And let's go look in there. So I got into that plane, and whole gallon of hydraulic fluid, real good. Took it back to our plane, put it in there, and the lieutenant said, I don't know what we're going to do or how we're going to get, when we're going to leave, because we ain't got no, I don't know where to get hydraulic fluid. Oh, okay. I said, well, you don't need to worry about that, Lieutenant. What do you mean? I says, I talked to your crew chief. He said, we're all set to go, but we can take off. And then when we got up in the air, flying back to Miami, he says to the ordnanceman, I was sitting back in one of the blisters, where did you get the hydraulic fluid? I said, swing around to the port, I says, and go over the base. I said, see that little widgeon down there? Yeah. Oh no, he says, that's the captain's of the base plane. He said, that's his plane. I said, well, he don't have any hydraulic fluid. He said, okay. So gee, it wasn't too long a flight from there into Miami, and we hit a terrific rainstorm and lightning storm over Miami before we could land, and I sit back there and I watched, and man, all of a sudden everything just went, whew, we hit a downdraft. I don't know how many thousands of feet we fell, but we fell an awful lot, and when we hit solid air, I watched those wings, and they bowed a little bit and straightened back out. And we got down on the ground there, and the lieutenant says, boys, you better get on your hands and knees. Why? He says, thank the good Lord that we made this one. He says, usually you fall that far in the downdraft, you don't make it. And the wings don't stand it, but they did, yeah. Okay. But otherwise, went home on leave, and at that time, she was my girlfriend, and she lived across the street from me when we were young, and I went to school together, and that was fine, and I wanted to get married. and I was 19 years old, something like that, 18, yeah, again 19, yeah, anyway, well, fine. And Dad said, no way, you're too young. No, I didn't, so, but otherwise we kept in touch with each other. And then when I went back out to, oh yeah, where was it? Oh yeah, I went back down to Miami and flew back to the base at Trinidad, and then walked in the base, into the ordnance shack, and the man said, what are you doing here? Well, what do you mean, what am I doing here? He says, that plane that you took off from here to go home on crashed at sea. It did. I says, I don't know when, but I says, we made it to Puerto Rico. I says, and that was it, and I'm here. He said, well, you're mighty lucky. Yeah. So then, after that, then my time was up down there for overseas, and they shipped me back to the States, to Pensacola.
Okay. Now, talk a little bit about just living on Trinidad. Did you spend all of your time on the base, or would you go off base?
No, Trinidad was an island, a British island, real good. Well, fine, we could go into town, but Henry Street in Port of Spain, where we were at there, was restricted from there to the rest of the island. We couldn't go by Henry Street.
Okay.
If you did, they throw you in a brig. But we used to go into town and we used to eat at the, they had a little eatery there that he was a, he came there from Germany or other, and he run that restaurant, and he was a real good cook, and we used to go there and eat lots of times. And we'd go to the movies there, and then naturally the guys all drank and everything there and had their time then, and there was several things that I want to even speak about there that the boys went to, you know, and I mean, House of Ill Repute.
Yes.
But I've been in several of them houses, but no way. No, and well, the trouble with down there, venereal disease was so prevalent, and this and that, and when I went back to the States, I was supposed to wear a black armband. That meant that you were in them areas where that was so prevalent. I never did, but anyway, yeah, then when I got transferred back to that, my time was up in Trinidad, I went to Pensacola then.
Okay.
Pensacola was, well, actually, I wasn't assigned to any squadron or anything, but they put me on the firing range down there, like the machine gun range and pistol range. That's where I spent some time there, because I knew how to take all the pistols apart and re-clean them and all them kind of goodies and that. And I had a bad experience there also. Had an officer come there, fine, we took him down there on the range and told him if anything goes wrong with your pistol or lay it on the pedestal and we'll take care of it. Wonderful. Well, he started firing his pistol, and somewhere along the line it jammed or that, and he turned around and stuck it in my guts. Hey, bang! I knocked him right, I hit him right in the jaw and knocked him down. And he says, and he knew better than to do it, because he was told not to do anything with it, but lay it down. Okay, well.
And he was pointing it at you.
Yeah, he did. In fact, it was only about that far, about a foot away from my stomach. And that, but anyway, fine. And he told me when he got up, he said, I'll have you court-martialed, send you to prison for hitting an officer. And I said, be my guest. Because I was kind of cocky then too, you know, be my guest. Well, Monday morning, he had me up before the old man at the base, full captain. And he asked me what happened. And I told him just exactly what happened and why. And he says, you're excused. Okay, wonderful. I walked out of the office and when I was walking out the office, I could hear him chewing on that lieutenant. He said, next time you get on that range, you do what you're told. He says, they're the boss, not you. Being an officer or lieutenant. Okay. Well, he came back a couple of weeks later. And, well, John, you take care of him. No. Smitty, he was a first class ordnanceman. You take him. Okay, so down there, everything worked out fine. But after that, that was good. And then, I know they had a drawing of names to go to a school. And my name came up. And, oh boy, here I go. What am I going to do now? Well, I had to check out all the different places in the base that I'd been, you know, do this, do that. And it'd take you a day and a half to do it. And I just marked it all off, period, turned it in, okay, good. So the next day, they had to go to the office and get my orders made up. Okay, fine, so I got my orders made up. I was supposed to catch the morning train out of Pensacola, and I told them, there's no way I could get from the base to into Pensacola to catch the train, make it the noon one. Well, they didn't. So when I got up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I went over to St. Paul, check in there, fine, real good. Well, I was 10 o'clock at night when I got in there, and I put all my gear away, went to bed, real good. About an hour and a half later, 2 hours later, somebody shook me, says, what do you want? He says, the officer of the day wants to see you. Oh, okay, so went down there, just went to the officer of the day, fine. He says, you're late on your orders. He says, didn't you look at them? I says, to tell you, the only time I opened them orders up was when some MP on the train wanted to look at them. I said, here you are. Okay, oh, he says, you got your, he didn't even open them. So, in fact, I think it was on the train from Chicago to Minneapolis, the 400, I rode that train, that was good. And there was somebody on there, they opened my orders. It's the first time they were open. Well, when I talked to the officer there, the day, that night, he says, how far, where do you live? I said, Michigan. He said, where? I told him where, in Grand Rapids. He says, because you've made it home? I said, I could have never made it home from, then they got back here at the time I am here. I says, he said, well, how far is it? I said, I know it's 150 or 200 miles from Chicago. I says, there was no transportation at that time. How could I go home? Oh, okay. Well, they threw me in the brig. He said, there you are. He said, well, we're going to be up for a captain's mess on Monday morning. Okay, good. So I was there, and I explained to the officer there. I said, there's just no way I could get to Homeland back in time. I said, why would I want to go home? Because after school, I was supposed to have a 16-day leave. I said, why would I want to go home? That's right. Well, they had an old 20-year chief there, and he says, I don't think he went home. He says, I know what happens. He says, these people make these orders up and they don't care whether you can make them or not, and if you're in late, here you are. Okay. And the officer says, well, he says, he says, I'm sure you didn't go home because he says, getting a leave afterwards, no way, which I didn't, so I got excused the way I went. But there again too, and I don't know, I was into the office there, and I had my hands up on the counter there now. We needed some money out of my account, so I was in there asking for some. And I, okay, well, we'll see what we can do for you, because I hadn't had a payday in 4 weeks. And I was a little on the broke side. So anyway, I had my hands up there, and an officer come out of the room back there, and he heard me talking, yeah, this, that. Oh, he come up, he said, lay your hands back up there on that table, on the counter there. He went, I had a big cyst on this wrist. You snap that? I said, I'll hit you. He says, fine. He says, 8 o'clock tomorrow or Monday morning, you report to the dispensary. Okay. So the first class instructor wouldn't let me out of the class. I was supposed to be there at 9 o'clock. He wouldn't let me out of the class. I says, fine. I says, okay. So finally I said, I got to be to the dispensary. So I got up and he said, you're not going anywhere out of this class until I excuse you. I said, sir, I called him sir because he was our instructor. Fine. I said, I've got to be to the dispensary. The doctor wants to look at my hand. And he says, well, I said, it's 10 o'clock or better already. And they were screaming for me in the dispensary. Finally, I got in there, it was around 11:15, and the doctor looked at that hand, he says, we're going to take care of that. He says, fine. So, all right. So he said, go in there and lay down on the table. So I did. And he strapped me down. He said, now this, he says, we're going to take that out of there. All right, and he was full captain, the doctor was. And he was a little German doctor, what he was, anyway. But anyway, he looked at that hand, and And he, no, please. I said, don't do that, that hurts. Okay. So he told the corpsman, give me two syringes full of Novocaine. He froze it real good. I got it. This is gonna hurt. Yeah, it did. And he said, this last one will hurt the most. And he stuck it right down through the middle of it. And if I could have come off that stretcher or off the chair, or the table, that was it. Okay. So anyway, I laid on the table there, and he said, well, I'm going to have a cup of coffee. Oh, I said, all right, fine. So he went and had his coffee. He came back and he pinched a little bit, and he says to the corpsman, give me a little bit more of that Novocaine. So he threw it some more, and he said, now we're going to take it out. It took him 45 minutes to get it out of there. And he says to me, he says, you know, you're lucky you had it out. He says, in another couple of years, you'd have lost the use of that hand. All these tentacles and things on that cyst was starting to go onto your cords and that. So anyway, fine, never had no trouble since. In fact, you still see the scar there, a big scar, a couple inches long. But otherwise, yeah, that was it. Well, then I went back to class, and that instructor, ooh, was he mad. He didn't like it at all. I handed him a note. I wasn't to do any type of duty, period, with that hand. I didn't have to march with the men. I didn't do nothing. I walked on it was in the wintertime. They walked in the snow and the slush in the street. I walked on the sidewalk where it was all clear. You know, he looked at me. You could just see him swearing under his breath at me. But otherwise, I never have any trouble. And after that, I went to Crow's Landing in California.
What was the school itself for?
The school was for what they call JATO, Jet Assistant Takeoff. And then we also had a class on rockets, which were coming into their field now for their fighter planes and things like that. And we schooling how to handle them and how to fuse them and everything else, and put the explosives in them. Yeah, that was it. That was quite a deal. Yeah.
Now the jet assisted takeoff, was this for taking off?
Well, for big planes on the short runway.
Okay.
That was it, yep. And PBM sometimes used them to get off the water with also if they had a heavy load. See? And that, but mostly, I don't know, I've only seen one PBM use them. That's it. But otherwise, no. That was in Trinidad down there. That was way before I went back to the States. They had the unit working. But,
all right. So how long did you spend at that school?
What was it, 4 weeks, I think it was, something like that. I don't know, it was a month or 2 months there, I was there. I think it was a month and a half, something like that.
Okay. And then you got your leave home after that?
Yeah, I got leave, went home, and then from there, I had orders to report to Crow's Landing in California.
Okay. And what part of California is that in?
Well, it was right in the middle of the California there. We were, 90 miles away from San Francisco.
Okay.
South of that.
All right.
And that, and, well, it was 12 or 15 miles out of the Modesto, California. That was the big town there.
Right. Okay.
But otherwise that, and but it was right in the heart of the, like I say, the Sacco-Keen Valley down there. They had 3 air bases in there, and I think Trinidad was the furthest south than that, and we were assigned to big 4Y2 planes there. They were land-based 4-engine planes, and they were used for patrol and bombing both. They could use them wherever they wanted, the Navy could. They had those. I was there and that, and it was a pretty good base there. But everything was good. But then when the war ended, then
what was your job at Crow's Landing?
I was just Aviation Ordnance, and yeah, we were. Lots of time we had to take and put the gun interrupters into force in there. We had a big 3-foot or 4-foot long pole that we used, and you put it on the end of the end of the come on now, come up with it.
The-
The wing,
Okay.
the end of the wing like that, and on the tail like that. So if you're firing your turret and you come around too close,
Mhm.
the interrupters would shut you off. So you
Right.
would shut the gun off.
Right.
So, but otherwise, yeah, that was it mostly. And then anything that would need to be done on the planes, we could do, had to. But we didn't do any. I didn't do any flying in them or anything like that or that. But otherwise, yeah, that was this is all the groundwork we took care of. Yeah. And
Okay.
then from there, when the war ended, well, yeah, what was it? I got leave to go home. Well, wasn't that real good? Yeah. So what they do with our orders? Dick Smith and I were together. We were good friends. His order the same way. No public conveyances to be used. Big stamped red letters. How am I supposed to go home? By the thumb.
Wow.
And we did. And we got, I don't know where it was anyway, we got away, and then a couple of NAS pilots were going home on leave, and they picked us up and they took us on into Reno. And then we caught the bus out of Reno I did to Chicago, and Dick got off, I forget just what town he got off, but he caught a ride out of there, right to his home. A fella picked him up, took him right home.
Okay.
And
Of course, a bus is a public conveyance.
oh yeah,
Did you just decide you didn't care about those orders anymore?
there was nobody around to look at him.
Okay.
And that was it. So I got into Chicago, and I just got on the train and come home.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then from then, after that, I wanted to get married again, and Dad said, no, not until you get out of the service. So that was it. Okay, he says, you're too young.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, but otherwise, yeah, that went back there, and then okay, fellas, all get your gear together, and you're going to get shipped out. Where are we going now? So you're going up to Frisco. So we went up to San Francisco, and they put us on that carrier, and then I rode that Sitkoh Bay. She was a Jeep supply carrier, is what she was, and we rode a real rough storm the second day out. Well, when you get water coming over the flight deck down the forward elevator, you know it's rough, and that was fine. So anyway, we took a 37-degree list and sideways, and she righted herself, but talked to a couple of the crew people, and they said if it had been another 2 or 3 degree list, we'd have never made it. But otherwise, yeah, that was it. Got into Hawaii, and then they shipped me down to Barbers Point. That was on the southwest end of the island, and they had a big base there, and they were fighter planes, and we got put into a night Deveron squadron and fighter planes there, and the ordnance shack, and they were all brand new planes. Just came in, they've been just shipped from the States to Hawaii there, and we had to put them all in commission so they could. There were 6 50 caliber machine guns on those planes, 3 in each wing, plus 2 20-millimeter cannons, 1 in each wing. And we had 32 planes, I believe it was, to take care of. And
Now, what kind of plane were they?
they were a fighter plane. They were an I think an F6, something like that, or F4, Navy fighter planes.
Okay,
They
well,
were carrier planes, actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I
but
guess the F6s, I think, were Hellcats, was that right?
Well, they could be a Hellcat, yeah, something like that,
Okay.
yeah. I never did figure out what they were. All I know is we worked 2 weeks, night and day on them, to get them all in commission and that. And we had a lieutenant in charge of us, Lieutenant Schilling, and he treated me just like a son. And then anything need to be done or wanted to be done extra, I'll do it for you. Okay, so one day he says, you know, we ought to clean the ordnance shack up. Fine. He said, how do you want to clean it up? I don't know. It was all kind of gringy and grimy, you know, from working on that. There's all Procato and that stuff that was in there. And we worked with, I forget what the name of it is now, and they used anyway, we used that to clean them guns with. And it was really a no-no. It was bad for your system and your hands and everything else. But we done it. You know. But anyway, so I said, okay. I said, well, let's give it a coat of paint. We'll clean it up. Well, who's going to do it? Oh, I'll do it. So I painted the whole ordnance shack and the office both. Well, the skipper of the squadron had his office on the other side of us. Okay, well, every morning, I used to have to come make coffee because everybody else had made coffee and made it like mud. There's no way. So finally, I made coffee every morning before muster, real good. So I always took the captain his cup of coffee, and he had to have a little bit of cream, half a spoon of sugar. That was it. Okay, good. So well, he found out. I come in there one day and he looked. He says, "Who's the one that done the painting in here?" Me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Would you like to paint my office?" "Yes, sir. I'll paint your office for you. But there's only one thing I want to ask you. What's that? You move your desk and all your equipment there and files into the ordnance shack. So it's clear so I don't have to work over them." I said, "It's just too hard to work over all that stuff." I said, and I said, "Not only that, if I drop splatters of paint, you're going to have it on your desk and that." I said, "I don't think you'd like that." No, because I didn't have anything to covering up with.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, no, I never did paint his office.
Oh, well.
Oh yeah, but he was real good to me. And he wanted me to sign over. He said, sign over and stay with the squadron." He says, "You're the life of the ordnance shack over there." "Yeah," I said, "I know." But I says, anyway, he says, "You know, anybody wants to know anything about ordnance or ordnance shack or that," he said, "who do they come to?" "Me." I said, "I don't know why." He says, "Well," he says, "I think you got your nose into everything." And that was my nickname, Nose. Yeah, but anyway, I left the squadron and went home. And then I got married, fine, and I worked with my dad painting and decorating. And Dad went to Florida and left us without a job, my brother and I. So we went to Calvinators and worked there, and I didn't like working inside there at Calvinators. Well, inside and outside. I was in the shipping department and unloading department. Okay, fine. So I know. Anyway, I kind of took sick or something. I just didn't feel real well. Well, I went over to the tavern one day. I'm going to go get a beer. So I went over, had a beer, and I was sitting there at the bar, and that fine. I'm looking for a job. What kind of job you want? I said, anything rather than working over there at Calvinators. That's too heavy a work. Well, anyway, go down on the, to see a fellow by the name of Grigwire. He's a train master there for the railroad. "What kind of work is that?" "It's outside work." He says, "You'll be working with boxcars and things like that." "Oh, okay." So I went over there and went down to the next day there and talked to him. "Sure," he said, "we need switchmen." "All right." So he says, "Here, fill out the papers." So I filled the papers out. Very good. So I went over to go downtown, see another train master down there, and he says, "Okay, here's your papers, go up and get your physical." Well, passed the physical. Next day they said, okay, went back, turned them in. He said, "Well, tomorrow you come down," he said, "you take your student trips." Well, that's wonderful. Well, that was real good. Well, the only trouble was, the student trips fell in between Christmas. And Christmas, they wanted me to come to work because everybody wanted to lay off for Christmas. Okay, they said they'd come up to call me. I says, I was home all day Christmas. I says, and I only live four blocks away from the yard. And then he says, "I don't know where they went to or who they called. They never called me." But anyway, I went to work went in the next day and fine, real good. I think it was 27th day of December of '46. I went on the seniority board and stayed there for 38 years and a half. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that and then. Well, in the meantime, I was married and everything. I had children and everything. And every time we had a child, I always, if I had vacation coming, I always took my vacation. So I helped with the wife when she came out of the hospital. See, yeah, and took care of the baby and things like that with her, and washed diapers. And well, at that time we couldn't have we couldn't buy a wash machine or a refrigerator. So I said, I will downstairs washing diapers by hand. People say, "You're nuts." Oh, well, I said, "No, it's true. That's what I done." I just helped the wife and everything else. Yeah. And my second child that came along, she was a dandy to have. She had the, I don't know what you want to call it, the colic of the crew or something like that, but she wouldn't sleep nights or anything. In fact, yeah, dandy. I worked afternoons from 4 to midnight, and when I got home at midnight, I took care of carried her for 6, 7 hours before I got her back to sleep. but everything got fine, so, and I had ulcers at the time. Oh, boy, and hey, that was dandy, so I know I had some type of medicine to coat my stomach with, this and that, and I says, now, she give the daughter a bottle, and I says, I'm gonna put some of that medicine in, because if your stomach growling all the time, see, and gas, fine. I give her that, she cleared it up, she went to sleep, hey, fine, real good. So I told the wife about it, she said, you're gonna kill her. I said, well, her stomach is a lot stronger than mine is with an ulcer. Oh, okay, good. So we had to go into the doctor and talk to the doctor, and the doctor said, he said, you shouldn't give that to the baby. I said, well, she's got gas all the time and everything else, and crying all the time, night and day, and what are we supposed to do? I said, I'll try anything. I said, you know, with an ulcer, like you told me, I says, coat it, this and that, so it would heal. Yeah, fine, well. I says, now she's sleeping all night for us. He says, you know, I'll have to remember that. Somebody else has a colic like that, we'll give her some of that medicine, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I've been pretty fortunate. I lived on Rathbone there for 23 years and that, and had the 3 children, that, fine. Then I finally moved out here, had this house built, we moved in Granville, so I've been here now for 70 years, so I've been, give thanks to the good Lord that I'm still here yet. I got my problems and aches and pains with arthritis and all them kind of goodies and that, and oh, I got health problems, you can see that on the table, all my medicines I take, but I get them through the VA now, so I'm pretty fortunate there. And it cost me $11 per prescription for a month, but I did a lot better than $100 or $150 for it. Yeah. So.
Okay. Now, as you kind of think back to the time that you spent in the Navy, what do you think you took out of that, or how did that affect you?
Well, the one thing, you know, you're in the service, you learn to take orders. And when I was on the railroad, I had a couple of train masters. Got accused of having accidents and that I never had, see, and I learned how to take orders and that, and I says, finally, I just the train masters that gave me my work for the night. I was working an afternoon job, 16 hours a day, and that, and fine. I said, you put it on the slip and give it to me. I'll write out what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And out of that, I says, if the yard master has something to do, when I get back in the yard, fine, have it wrote out and I'll do it. I says, I learned how to take orders in the service, and that's what I'm doing. I want you to give me the order just like I would for an officer in the service giving me orders. Well, I says, to sit here and talk to you and you give me this, tell me that, I says, you know, I can't keep all them things in my mind. I says, I was a conductor then. I said, I got a crew to take care of, 5 of us on the crew. See, that, I said, make sure when we go to work and we come home, we're all in one piece. Oh yeah, there's a couple of men out there, lost legs, lost, you know, one lost an arm. Oh yes, he reached in there to open the coupling system and backed up and crushed his arm right in the coupling system. Oh yeah, I got knocked down a couple of times too. I walked in behind the boxcars to open up the coupling system. I give the engineer a go-ahead signal and he backed up instead. Knocked me down, yeah. Thank God I was in between the 2 tracks, between 4 and 6 track. Dandy. If I hadn't drawn my legs up, I'd have lost both legs. But otherwise, in fact, I had one fellow work with me. He got his ankle crushed, and they took it off. And he's the only man they ever knew of that stayed switching, that wore a prosthetic. In fact, he was on the job with me one night. We were switching the boxboard in Granville, real good, and it broke. I go on and get in the caboose. Okay, so he hobbled over to the caboose and got in there and says, all right, now when we come into the yard, we're done switching in Granville, I says to him, take me down to, run me down the main line to the north end where his car was. And so he got it down there and that, and then I got back in the yard and everything else we had to do, a couple of chores in the yard, and we done short-handed, so, but it worked out fine. You know, I'm still glad, and you can see the house I have built here, real good. I've done all the decorating in it. everything that you see is decorating, and I was always handy with my hands. The brain sometimes don't work as good as my hands do. My brains is in my hands. Like, you know what a horologist is? You never heard of the word, have you?
No.
You got it on your wrist.
Oh,
Watch work.
very good.
I've done watch work for 50 years. Yeah, I even had my shop on brass boat. But like what it says there too, we were licensed. I had to have a license. It cost me $35 a year to have a license to do the work. Yeah, a lot of the jewelers in town didn't like me. They called me the back alley watchmaker.
You were cheap. All right. Well, this tape is about up, and I think we've kind of gotten around to the end of the story, so I'd like to close this out by thanking you for taking the time to share the story
Well,
today.
I thank you for coming, yes, and that, and I, like I say there, I try to keep the brain as, you know, with the knowledge I have in it, where I can come back and remember a lot of it. In fact, there's a lot of things I probably should have said here that I didn't, but like I say there again too, I just thank you for coming and taking the messages, yeah.
All right.